Welcome back to Doomsday Happy Hour. I'm your host, DJ Peters. Today's episode is about celebrities. Us Weekly, which for a long time I thought was either Us Weekly or US Weekly, had no idea. Us Weekly has a column about how stars, they're just like us. I would argue that the ones that routinely make it into magazines are not like us. Not by a long shot. Here's why. So a handful of years ago, Kim Kardashian and Kanye West splurged on a mansion in, I think it's Hidden Hills, somewhere in LA, with a $22 million price tag. I think they got it for a discount for $20 million. It's not the money they spent on the home. It's the fact that they bought it without having to cash out of their $11 million home first. That is, they didn't need the $11 million to buy a place twice as expensive. Which, by the way, when they bought it, made them automatic vineyard owners overnight. Now, they paid $20 million, they got 8,000 square feet. Over a few years, they invested another $20 million in the place. It's now over 15,500 square feet. It's not even my point though. My point is that last year, when they wanted to have their floors repaired, they flew in a crew from Europe. No criticism, it's their money, they earned it, totally theirs to do what they want with. But my point is that if you can afford to fly in a crew from Europe to a place with over 15,500 square feet, you can afford to quarantine the asses of anybody you need to come into your home to do whatever kind of work you need during COVID. Repairing the floors, changing a light bulb, I don't know, dusting. You can quarantine them totally apart from your family for 14 days, no problem. Meanwhile, I'm talking to you from the comfort of my own home, which you will notice is significantly in the dark because multiple light fixtures broke just before COVID hit. And now, I'm scared shitless to bring in a stranger to fix the place. On the plus side, since there's practically no light, I'm actually wearing my hair down for the first time since giving myself the DIY haircut with no mirror, because maybe that means you can't see me. But just in case, I have this. How's this? Can you see me now? So now that I'm back to light, back to my hat, cover up the mistake from before, this brings me to item number 2. Celebrities not just like us. Maybe you heard Elon Musk and Leanne Grimes had a baby. Congrats to them. Maybe you heard the baby's name, or the baby had a name, and you have no idea how to pronounce it. Well, the first name is X. But after that, you need a how-to guide, both how to pronounce and how to understand. Now, item 3. If we're going to be talking about celebrities and how they're not like us, it's almost irresponsible not to raise the topic of plastic surgery. I'm not just talking about Kim and Kanye going back to the Kardashians. I'm talking about almost all of them, like the article I read 10 plus years ago where one plastic surgeon was saying that he was doing the second facelift for a 30-year-old celebrity. And might I point out that if you are 30 years old and getting your second facelift, chances are you're getting other work done too. Now, I totally agree with celebrities like Kaylee Cuoco who say it's a personal choice. 100%. But I will point out that it's a choice that the average John Doe or Jean Schmo probably can't afford. And certainly not with the regularity and variety that they're going for. The tab is just too steep. Last but not least, I want to come full circle. Back to Us Weekly. Stars, they're just like us. Because every guy I know who goes jogging, people are there waiting to take his picture like this. But turn to the other side and you find Chris Rock eating a piece of pizza. Okay. How many people do you have taking your picture and selling it to a national magazine while you're eating in the park? What? None? But in Star Magazine, again, we have Chris Rock eating a piece of pizza. 2 different pictures in 2 national magazines. The guy is chewing food and it makes national headlines in 2 different periodicals. Oh my God. These people are not like us.
So how smooth of a journey was it?
So I knew I wanted to work in the finance, and I also knew, talking about a strategy as well, I knew that the federal government is known within the disabled community as a friendly employer, right? So an employer that will give you a shot at least at interviewing, and then once you're hired, it's up to you to prove yourself. It's just a perception in the disabled community that you know that certain employers are going to be more open to your opportunities. And so go ahead and put some effort into getting the attention of those employers. So I was hired by the Securities and Exchange Commission out of law school. And, but some of the rocks that I might have hit along the way, or some of the rapids that I had to navigate along the way, started showing up actually pretty early in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And within the first year of working at the SEC, my hiring manager put in for early retirement. And so I started in October, and she, I think, retired by July. And so why is that important? When you get hired by any employer as someone who's visually impaired, you have to dispel any notions they have about people with disabilities or what you can and cannot do. And it's not because of any malice on the hiring manager's part. It's just a lack of experience. And so what you need to do is to fill that experience gap with useful knowledge so that they can make an informed decision with respect to a hiring process. And so
basically
that's
what you're saying is, if you're looking to get hired for an entry-level position or just switching jobs, the overwhelming chance is that the person you're interviewing with to hire you does not have experience with sight impaired or blind people. And so they don't even know if they can't even conceive of a way to make it work, and you have to bridge that gap for them. You have to educate them and sell yourself at the same time. So basically you're doing 2 roles, because everybody has to sell themselves when they go into interview, but you're also, in a presumably nice and non-pedantic way, educating them and about disability and that you can do the job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to do both things. And so there's a lot of anxiety because you have 2 jobs. One, you got to get the job or justify and successfully argue why you're a really credible candidate for the job, and also be successful at allaying any fears about the lack of experience someone might have with someone who is visually impaired. And I think that is justified. You have to explain how you perform the job. And so, tying it back into my hiring manager retiring, that was slightly scary because I had already successfully argued that I thought I deserved a shot, and that the job was given the technology, the current state of technology, it was very straightforward to make the job accessible. So when the hiring manager retired, that person was on my team. That person was an advocate for me, and I had to continue to make sure I lived up to their expectations so that they would continue to be an advocate for me. But once they left, then I had a big question mark about who was my next advocate, because then I had to make sure I demystified any thoughts that they had about whether or not, or how someone with a disability, a visual disability, could perform the job.
Were you able to find one or more new advocates? I mean, because I think what you're saying, if I understand it correctly, is an advocate is not just somebody who wants to see you succeed, but they're taking a chance on you and they see it as a risk, and they're at least in their minds, they're sticking their neck out for somebody they don't know. So were you able to find somebody else? Because, a lot of people, they just want to kind of keep their heads down and do their thing.
I never really quite felt like I had an adequate replacement, because she was great. She was spot on, and she was mentor, good trainer, very tough on me, and wanted me to succeed, wanted me to be the best I could be. What I did find, even though I never really felt like I found a true replacement, I did find a lot of people had room for being a professional friend, a professional contact. So, the last 3 years I was there at the SEC, I was left, one, figuring out if I could find a replacement for that advocate, and then two, how do I continue to train myself and become a better attorney and execute my job better without that type of backstop that advocate originally provided for me.
Right.
And so that required a lot of, as I mentioned before, with education, I was really self-taught. I've always been self-taught, but just because that was just the facts that I grew up with. That led me to realize that I had to take initiative for my own career development, had to take initiative to identifying my weaknesses, my gaps, and how to solve filling in those gaps. And those were challenges that were fun to solve, but also somewhat scary.
So then what came next?
I knew that I wanted to go into the private sector. Some of the folks that I did befriend at the SEC after my original advocate left told me that one thing that private law firms do very well, the law firms do train attorneys very well, especially some of the big, top 50, top 100 law firms. And so I knew that I wanted that challenge. I knew I needed new and different training. So joined this one law firm, and within 6 weeks of being there, the hiring partner that hired me also moved on to a new opportunity.
Okay. Wow.
Again,
that sounds rough.
Right. And totally took me by complete surprise. I think probably took a lot of people by surprise. And again, not to disparage anybody, everyone's got their own career goals, family needs, and aspirations, but it did put me in a position where I had to figure out, okay, who was going to be my advocate again, because the advocate who hired me, the person who I had convinced in the interview room that I was going to be someone that in the long run would be a valuable asset to the team, had vanished. It almost felt like I was reapplying all over again for a new job, even though I was already hired. It's kind of ironic, or it started to be comical. I think it's probably the better way to characterize it. It was a little comical that when it happened at the law firm, I was like, wow, I've actually been through this again, although I didn't want to go through this again. But it was up to me to then, again, reach out to people, shake hands, introduce myself, make myself be known. How can I distinguish myself from my peer group? Can I acquire a new skill set that will make me valuable and distinguish me from my peers so that work would come my way? So after 6 weeks of being there, the original advocate left, and I spent another year and a half at that law firm trying to develop new opportunities and develop new inroads to find that new advocate. And ultimately, it didn't feel like I was getting as much traction as I wanted. And so I was able to get coffee with some other partners at another law firm. This is law firm number 2, and pitched them on why I thought that the two aspects of my master's degree in economics and finance, my experience at the SEC, combined with the unique skill set that I acquired with understanding blockchain technology and understanding how it applied to finance, I was able to put that into a nice package that told a really compelling story why I thought I would be a valuable asset to their team. And that.
Okay, so then they hire you.
Right, so they hired me.
Okay.
And hit another rapid. Within 9 months, the main partner responsible for hiring me, she left to move on to a new law firm. So she left within 9 months. So
you
at that time, I was really,
again.
so again, for a third time in a row, I lost an advocate again. And
in 9 months or less.
Correct. So
you weren't through them like that.
My advocates were following what their needs and wants were with respect to their families and their career aspirations. And I don't fault them for that at all.
So 3 advocates, you fill them all like birds, 9 months or less. If this were target practice, we call you like an expert marksman.
Right.
Okay, but so now you're, again, looking for your bearings, looking to get the growth and professional satisfaction and challenge that you're looking for. So how do you get from X to Y, or X to Y to Z?
So I think for me, what really worked and what resonated was falling back on what I knew, and that is being fiercely determined. And
Mhm.
I have this phrase that I use. I call it my 3D approach to life. And it's dedication, determination, and discipline. And I've always told myself that if you use the 3D approach to life of dedication, determination, and discipline, you can ultimately be happy with wherever you end up in life.
It may not be the place that you're planning to end up,
Right.
but you will have kind of made a space for yourself that is satisfying and fulfilling, is what you're saying.
And the reason why that works for me, and I think it might work for some other people too, is because you're focusing on what's within your control, not what is out of your control. I just harness those 3 words and I apply them to make myself better in the current situation and prepared to take advantage of the next opportunity.
So tell us a little bit about where you have landed now, how it's become a really satisfying place to land.
Sure. So where I currently work, and of course, I'm here in my personal capacity, and none of my views reflect my employer's thoughts. But where I work now, I work at a trust that was started by a wealthy family, and the trust it's known as an institutional investor, and so the beneficiary of this trust is actually a nonprofit children's hospital, and so
lovely.
We're primarily responsible. We manage a large number of dollars, primarily to benefit this pediatric hospital. And this pediatric hospital focuses on providing healthcare to children and families that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford various types of healthcare services. And so there is a mission that is pretty compelling. When I was at my last job at law firm number 2, I was starting to get in reps doing rigorous contract analysis and contract negotiations on investment funds and raising capital. And I've always been in the capital formation and securities industry, which is all about how you raise money for operations for either businesses or even hedge funds and investment funds. And so I started seeing how my skill sets were starting to fall into place. These puzzle pieces are starting to all start linking together. And I was in a position where I was becoming a senior associate, and the decision was coming up pretty quickly in my career. Do I make a compelling pitch for why I should be a partner or of counsel, which is another senior attorney position in a law firm? Or do I try to make the transition into something back at a federal agency or in-house within a law department of an organization? And so I knew I was at that transition point, and I had to figure out how to execute that transition point and how to pivot successfully. I wasn't actively seeking anything just yet, but you kind of know it when it happens.
You can't control when the openings become available.
Right, exactly. You have no way to figure that out, but you can be prepared for it. And once I read the job description, I instantly knew that something about this organization and about this job opportunity resonated with me and resonated with the next step that I wanted to take my career. And so I put my name in the hat and started competing for the opportunity.
And was it the usual sales job where you had to sell yourself like any person, plus sell them on your ability to actually perform the work because of your handicap?
Yes, it was. It was this. From my perspective, I thought it was the same scenario that I've gone through already several times now.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. You've been there more than a year.
Correct.
Is your advocate still there?
Yes. First time. First time an advocate's lasted with me more than a year.
Okay, so then the question is, did they take you to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of your joining, or did you take them to celebrate the fact that they had stayed?
Well, if a current COVID environment is putting a wrench in those plans, but I think we plan on toasting that milestone as soon as we have an opportunity.
I just want to pivot to something completely unrelated to career for one moment. Although it looks like you're looking at me, you can't tell how horrible I look. And just for your reference, I am wearing a big hat, even though I'm indoors, to cover my hair because I cut my hair. Interestingly, I cut it in front of the camera, but not in front of a mirror, to donate 10 plus inches to Locks of Love. And so I'm left with the result. So I look horrible. You look like you're looking at me, and you could probably tell, but I know that you can't.
Right.
You met your wife when you already had effectively no sight. I think I saw a show with not John Derek's widow, Bo Derek, but one of his prior wives, and she said, he must have really loved me because after, I assume he divorced her, afterwards he married two women who looked just like her. And to me, that's like a little bit the opposite of love. To me, love is, I took a screenshot of it at some point. It was a man who was asked why he didn't leave his badly burned wife. And he basically said, I married all of her. I didn't just marry her face. She is the woman I married. And what's it like to fall in love when all you can see is not physical appearance? You're not seeing, but you're receiving something from this other person. And for all the people who go through all the plastic surgeries, put on tons of makeup, some people go to bed with makeup because they never want to be seen as who they are. Your wife, Chris, never has to worry about a wrinkle or what you're going to think of her if and when she goes gray, and whether or not, maybe she'll choose to color her hair, maybe she won't, but that'll be her call purely for her own sake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of women, when they think about what it means to be loved, think about it in terms of being embraced as a whole person. Can you speak to what it is to fall in love with somebody in such a deep way?
Yeah, I can. Largely because I've done it, obviously. It's, from my perspective, and what I'm about to say applies to more than just my wife. It just applies to human interaction generally, but I'll drill down on this question with respect to my wife as well. But the first thing I ever notice about anybody is how they treat me. And because that's all I've got. As I get to know somebody better, I discover more things about them and who they are, and I realize more about that person, more details. But initially, what really matters is what type of character they have, and how are they treating me as a stranger, as a human. And that's always my first interaction with somebody, and I find that to be profoundly important. That's all I ever get as my first initial interaction with somebody, and that translates to my wife, because when we first met, I wasn't triggering off anything other than, this is a really nice person. And then what was also important was that we had a lot of common interests. We both liked to hike. We both liked to be outside, be active. She appreciates the fact that what I have fallen in love with about her is not necessarily what she looks like. That's not what's most important to me. We realized that we had a lot in common, and we ended up, I ended up asking her out to go to dinner, and she eventually said yes. Didn't say yes right away. Took her a few times, but she ended up saying yes. And I know she's comfortable with me saying that she's no different from any other woman, that she feels certain pressures to look a certain way, and she has certain expectations of herself. So,
of course, yes. No, I don't think those come exclusively from a person's significant other.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that I think we all want to feel loved. I think that makes most of us, the ones who do not aspire to be hermits, feel accepted, and having a place in someone's heart makes us feel like we have just a better sense of our place in the world. And I feel like knowing that she doesn't have to defy nature or gravity to keep her place in your heart. Because, you see celebrities and at some point you think that maybe there's less than 50% of them that's natural. And sometimes they're doing it to win the love of somebody who clearly doesn't love their soul. And yes, of course, there's still pressures, but your love is not going anywhere.
That's right. It's not. And
that acceptance just, I would think, would be freeing of at least some pressures.
I hope it is for her, and I think it is. It's freeing to me with Chris, because we've talked about this too in the past, that I've always been very honest with her about my visual impairment and about what I want to do with my life, and we try to always have the best communication we can and work on communication and refine our communication to be as good as possible. And that has played into me finding peace with myself, with who I am, and being comfortable with who I am, how I feel, what I look like, and what I want to get done with my life and my career. And that I want Chris to be a part of that. And the reason why I want Chris to be a part of that is because she showed me who she was. And once I discovered that not only does she have a great heart, have great character, and we share a lot of common interests, that gave me the freedom for me to
be me around her. I didn't have to be somebody else. And that is what really drove my love for her. And
so you want to give her the same freedom, basically.
So I want to give her that same freedom back because of what she's done for me. It's the least I can do, and it's to make her feel loved. It's very low cost for me just to make her feel special.
Tyler, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.